You could be solving their problems perfectly, but they still won't care about you. A lot of businesses have this experience. Customers buy, maybe even twice, but they don't stay long term. They don't refer anyone, and when a competitor shows up, they leave without hesitation. And the confusing part is, the product is good, the service is solid, the problem gets solved. So what could be missing? Here's what most people don't realize. You can build an entire business without anyone knowing what you stand for. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you never decided what you wanted to represent publicly. You solve problems, you deliver value, you show up consistently. But if someone asks your customers, what does this brand believe? What do they stand for? Most couldn't tell you. And here's the thing. You don't need identity to make money. You can get customers, you can generate revenue, you can even grow. But the growth has a ceiling. Because without identity, every relationship stays transactional. People will engage with you, they'll buy from you, they might even like what you do. But here's what doesn't happen. They don't think about you when you're not in front of them. They don't bring you up in conversations unprompted. They don't become advocates who recruit other customers for you. Because the relationship never goes deeper than, you solve my problem, thank you, goodbye. It's transactional, not relational. And, that's fine if all you want is transactions. But if you want customers who stay, refer, and actually care about your success, that requires something most businesses never normalize. Now, you might be thinking, wait, if I solve the problem, well, isn't that enough? If someone needs a house and I sell houses, why does any of this matter? Fair question. And the answer is, it depends on what you're optimizing for. If you're okay competing purely on price, convenience, and features, sure, solving the problem is enough. But here's what that looks like. Every customer evaluates you against every competitor every single time. So there's no loyalty, no preference, no emotional attachment. You are a commodity, replaceable, and the moment someone else shows up who is cheaper or faster, they're gone. Now compare that to businesses with explicit identity. When someone buys from Apple, they're not just buying a phone. They're buying into a belief about design, simplicity, creativity, innovation. And when you buy from a brand that believes in environmental responsibility, you're not buying a jacket. You're buying into that belief. So when someone picks a brand with identity, they're choosing what that decision says about them. So this is the difference. Without identity, I choose you because you solve my problem. With identity, I choose you because of who I become by choosing you. One creates customers, the other creates advocates. One is about transaction, the other is about relationship. Now let me show you how this invisibility shows up in practice. When identity is invisible, you can see it in how businesses market themselves. First, every message focuses on the transaction. We sell houses, we offer consulting, we help you grow. It's all about what you do, never why you exist or what you believe. The messaging is accurate, but it's flat. There's no dimension to it. The second is acquisition is hard, but retention is even harder. You can get people to buy, but getting them to buy again or refer others, that requires effort every single time because there's no relational equity, no reason to stay beyond the immediate need being met. Third, you compete at the bottom of the funnel. So you focus entirely on people that are ready to buy right now because that's where the transaction happens. But the 95% who aren't in market yet, you have no way to speak to them. You can't even build preferences before they need you. Fourth, marketing feels exhausting. Every campaign is an interruption. Every message is trying to convince someone who doesn't know you, doesn't trust you, doesn't care about you. You're starting from zero every single time. This is why so many businesses burn out on marketing, not because they're doing it wrong, but because they're doing it without a foundation. Now, let me be specific about what this cost you. Without explicit identity, you cannot create preferences in advance. So people discover you when they need you, not before. So when they are ready to buy, you're competing with everyone else they just found. There's no existing relationship, so no accumulated trust. You're all strangers fighting for attention at the exact same time. You cannot build advocates. They might be satisfied. They might even recommend you if you directly ask, but they don't evangelize. They don't recruit new customers for you unprompted because there's nothing about that relationship that transcends beyond transaction. You cannot charge premium prices sustainably. Without identity, differentiation collapses into features, and features can be copied. Benefits can be matched, and prices becomes the tiebreaker, and you lose pricing power. You cannot turn customers into community. A community forms around shared belief. Without identity, there is no belief to rally around, just people who bought the same stuff. Here's the pattern that plays out over and over. Most businesses think the problem is their offer or their messaging or their funnel. So they optimize the offer, rewrite the messaging, fix the funnel, and nothing fundamentally changes. Because the problem isn't tactical, it's structural. Marketing built without identity can generate transactions, but it cannot create relationships that deepen, compound, or defend against competition. So what actually is identity? Because I think there's a lot of confusion about this. Identity is not your logo. It's not your color palette. It's not your tone of voice or your mission statements. Those are just expressions of identity. They're not identity itself. Identity is the position of responsibility that you take in your customer's life. It answers what problems do you take full ownership of, what transformation are you accountable for, what kind of guide are you choosing to be, and what belief about the world do you represent. Now, when this is undefined, every piece of marketing carries a different implication. So your content teaches one thing, your offers suggest another. Your sales conversations introduce a third position. People consume your work, but they can't describe what you stand for. So they might remember what you do, but not why it matters or who you are when you do it. And here's what's tricky. A lot of businesses operate with identity invisible even to themselves. They're not avoiding the identity work. They're not even planning to figure it out later. They just never recognized that identity is a decision that they need to make, so it stays implicit, assumed, and undefined. This creates a very specific problem. You can build momentum, but you can't build meaning. You can create transactions, but you can't create transformation in how customers perceive you. Without meaning, without transformation, the relationship never goes beyond utility. So let me give you a concrete example of what I mean. Let's say you run a marketing agency, for example. You help businesses grow. That's what you do. But what do you stand for? One agency might stand for speed and efficiency. We get results fast. Another might stand for comprehensive integration. We build systems that work together. Another might even stand for creative disruptions. We challenge conventions. Same service, same industry, completely different identities. And those identities attract completely different customers. The person looking for speed doesn't want comprehensive. The person looking for creative disruption doesn't want efficiency, at least at the top of their list. The identity is doing the filtering work. But if your identity is invisible, if you haven't decided what you stand for, then you're trying to attract everyone. And when you market to everyone, you connect with no one. So your message becomes generic. We help businesses grow through marketing. Okay, so everyone else does the same thing. This is where businesses get stuck. They know they need to differentiate. So they look at features. We use this methodology. We have this proprietary process. But, features are easy to copy, like I said before. Benefits are also easy to match. But identity, That's harder to replicate because identity requires a point of view, a belief system, a set of values that show up in how you choose. So let me tell you what identity actually looks like when it is formalized. It shows up in what you refuse to do, the boundaries you won't cross, the customers you turn away, and the shortcuts you wouldn't take, even when they would be profitable. So these refusals reveal your values, and values, when made public, become identity. So when someone sees you turn away a lucrative opportunity because it conflicts with what you believe, that says more about who you are than any marketing message ever could. Identity also shows up in what you're arguing against. So every strong identity is defined partly by opposition. So you're not just for something, you are also against something. You see a problem in how things are currently done. You have a contrarian belief about what actually works. And when you articulate that clearly, people who agree find you. They recognize themselves in your messaging. They think, yes, I've been frustrated by that too. And I've been looking for someone who thinks differently. This is how preferences forms before need. You're not waiting for someone to have a problem and then competing for their attention. You're building a relationship with them based on shared belief. So when they eventually need what you offer, there's no competition. You're the obvious choice. So let me show you how to make identity visible, because here's the good news. You don't need to invent this from scratch. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to extract what's already there and formalize it. So most businesses already have, fragments of identity embedded in how they operate. The work is consolidation and decision. Here's the framework. Step 1, identify your non-negotiables. What will you not do, even if it would be profitable? These boundaries reveal your values more clearly than anything you say yes to. Sit down and ask yourself, what shortcuts do we refuse to take? What kind of customers do we turn away? What industry norm do we reject? And, write these down. Be just very specific. For example, if you run a marketing agency, maybe your non-negotiable is we don't promise quick wins without foundational work, or we turn away clients who want to chase trends instead of building strategy, or we wouldn't execute campaigns without understanding the client's identity first. These aren't marketing messages. These are operating principles, but they become your identity when you make them public. And when you say, here is what we don't do, and here is why, you're drawing a line, and people on your side of that line would recognize themselves. Step 2, name what you're arguing against. Every strong identity has an antagonist, not a competitor, a belief system, a way of doing things that you think is wrong. So what common belief in your industry do you think is harmful? What approach keeps failing, but everyone still does it? What does the market reward that you believe creates bad outcomes? For example, we'll argue against fragmented marketing at Idevo Lab that it prioritizes speed over alignment. Or, believe the industry's obsession with virality creates noise, not lasting connection. Or maybe even think the focus on bottom-up funnel tactics is why acquisition cost continues to rise. This is your contrarian position, and it's magnetic because the people who have been frustrated by the same thing immediately feel seen. They think, finally, someone who gets it. Step 3, define the transformation you're responsible for. This is bigger than solving the immediate problem. What larger shifts are you enabling in your customers' world? Not we sell houses, but we help people find homes that match who they are becoming, not just where they are now. Or not we do marketing, but we turn identity into trust and trust into growth that compounds over time. That's Idevo, by the way. Not we offer consulting, but we help leaders make decisions that align with who they want to be, not just what they want to achieve. You see, the transformation should be emotionally resonant. It should go beyond the functional transaction, and it should be defensible, hard for competitors to copy because it requires a specific worldview to deliver on it authentically. Step 4, articulate what choosing you says about the customer. So when someone picks you over a competitor, What identity are they stepping into? This is critical because people don't just buy products. They buy what these products say about them. They buy the identity they get to claim by making that choice. For example, when you choose us, you're saying, I value depth over speed. I'm building for the long term. I'm willing to do the work of alignment because I know shortcuts don't compound. Or when you choose us, you're saying, I care more about meaningful impact than quick wins. I'd rather build something that lasts than something that looks good on social media. This isn't fluff. This is emotional value of the decision. And when you articulate it clearly, the right people recognize themselves. They think, yes, that's exactly who I am. And then step 5, test for consistency across touch points. Take 3 random pieces of your marketing, your homepage or recent email, a sales conversation. Do they all reinforce the same identity or do they sound like 3 different companies? Now, if they are scattered, you've confirmed the problem. If your homepage talks about innovation, but your sales team talks about reliability and your content talks about affordability, you don't have an identity. You have 3 competing messages. And customers feel that confusion. They might not be able to articulate it, but they sense the lack of coherence. And it makes them hesitate because they're not sure what they're actually buying into. When identity is consistent, everything reinforces everything else. Your content validates what your sales team says. Your sales conversations deliver on what your marketing promised. Your customer experiences reflect the same values you publicly claim. That consistency builds trust faster than any individual tactic ever could. Now, let me show you what changes when identity becomes visible. First, marketing stops being interruption. It becomes invitation. You're not convincing people to buy. You're inviting people who already believe what you believe to work with you. The entire dynamic shifts from persuasion to recognition. Second, customers become self-selecting. The right people recognize themselves in your message. The wrong people filter themselves out, and you spend less energy on bad faith prospects. Your sales conversations get easier because you're only talking to people who are already aligned. Third, preference forms before need. So you're not competing at the moment someone decides to buy. You've already built trust, So when they're ready, you're the obvious choice. There's no evaluation process. There's no comparison shopping. They already know they're working with you. And fourth, pricing becomes defensible. So you're not selling a commodity, you're selling alignment, and alignments can't be price compared. So when someone values what you stand for, price becomes secondary. They're not looking for the cheapest option, they're looking for the right pattern. Fifth, relationships deepen over time. So customers don't just buy once, they stay, they refer, they advocate because the relationship is relational. It's not transactional. They're not just buying your product. They're participating in something they believe in. And this is what compounds, not the marketing tactics, the identity. When identity is clear and consistent, every interaction builds on the last. Trust accumulates, reputation strengthens, word of mouth becomes your primary acquisition channel. And here is what's interesting. This doesn't make marketing easier in the short term. Marketing, making identity visible actually makes things harder at first because you're making choices, you're drawing boundaries. You're saying this is who we are and this is who we're not. That's uncomfortable because it means accepting that some people wouldn't even choose you. Some opportunities would be for you. Some money would be left on the table. But that discomfort is the cost of clarity. And clarity is what creates everything else you want: loyalty, advocacy, premium pricing, compounding growth. Most businesses avoid this discomfort. They want to keep their options open. They want to appeal to everyone. So they stay vague, they stay flexible, they stay invisible. And then they wonder why nothing sticks. Here's the truth. You don't need identity to succeed. You can solve problems, make money, grow without it. Plenty of businesses already do. But you need identity to build something that lasts. Something that defends against competition, something that creates advocates, not just customers, something that compounds. Identity is the difference between being chosen because you are available and being chosen because you are irreplaceable. And once it's visible, everything else gets easier. Not because the tactics change, but because the foundation is solid. You know who you are, your customers know who you are, and everyone who interacts with you feels that coherence. So the question isn't, do I need identity? The question is, what do I want to stand for? Answer that. Make it visible, make it consistent, and watch what changes. Because when identity is invisible, you're competing on transactions. When identity is visible, however, you're competing on meaning. And meaning is what people stay for. Meaning is what people refer. Meaning is what people care about. That's the invisible reason customers don't stay, refer, or care. Not because you're failing them, but because they never knew what you stood for in the first place. Fix that and everything else will follow. If you know someone who this video will help, you can send it to them. And if this video does help you, you can put something in the comment section. And if you really want to just talk about this, we're always happy to have a conversation. Visit us on idevalab.com. That is IDEVA lab.com, and book a time slot. We're always, like I said, happy to have a conversation. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one.